Montgomery. What is this guy known for? He was a famous British general in World War II. What was he famous for? Getting his ass kicked. There is no general in World War II with worse numbers than Bernard Montgomery. Now, don't get me wrong. There's a couple of Russian generals that didn't do so hot, but they were sacked. What do you do when your general gets his ass kicked? Do you give him a second chance? Well, maybe if there's understandable logistics beyond his control, but a good general will find a way past it. When you get your second ass whooping, you really need to be fucking sacked as a general. What did the Russians do? One loss, and your ass goes to the gulag, if you're lucky. How did the Russians do field promotions in World War II? The new boss comes in, lays a pistol on the table, and tells him to do the right thing. How many generals that were Russian blew their own brains out? A lot. The Germans never went for a tactical victory with numbers. That's right. The Germans never, throughout the entire course of the war, the Germans literally never had numeric superiority. Not in tanks, not in humans, not in artillery, not in production. The Germans straight up lost on every fucking front except Monty. My God, Monty tried to hand them World War II. How many battles did Monty win in North Africa? None. Monty did not win a single solitary battle. Not one. We give him credit for 2. What's that? British pride. And nothing more. Everyone in the UK knows that Monty was a fuck-up. He was a flop. He was a waste of space, and he wasted a lot of human lives because he was a fucking idiot. Oh yeah, but you can afford to be an idiot with a stiff upper lip, isn't that right? Where was Monty's biggest issue? Full-on frontal assault. Like an idiot. What is it that got the Japanese asses handed to them? The frontal assault. What is it that got the Germans' asses handed to them? The incessant need for frontal assaults. See, here's how you take out a bunch of Germans. You get a couple of guys, you have them go shoot up a couple of German positions, and the Germans, according to their military doctrine, had to retaliate. If you attacked a German position, you could expect 100% of the time that them Germans were going to be dummies and counterattack. And all you got to do, as we all know, well, those of us who are into history all know, it takes a lot more to besiege a position and to assault a fortified position than it does to defend one. If you're lucky, you can take over a fortified position with 10 to 1 odds, which Monty had most of the time. He also had a shit ton more trucks. The Germans had to do, or make do, with jack shit in North Africa. Was it that Monty was some great general? No, it's that the Germans just couldn't outproduce the British, let alone the Americans. Even after loaning hundreds of American tanks to the British, Monty still got his ass whooped. Meanwhile, none of the logistical situations that resulted in the 2 victories that Monty is given credit for actually came from Monty himself. Matter of fact, the 2 logistical decisions in each of those situations were directly thrown in the face of Monty. They were an affront to Monty's pride. Monty sacked the men who gave him his only 2 victories in North Africa because they didn't do what he wanted them to. However, they saw the tactical situation. Monty is considered a battlefield tactician, right? A battlefield commander, but he wasn't. He was a rear echelon motherfucker. You know what a battlefield commander looks like? Erwin Rommel is what a battlefield commander looks like. George S. Patton is what a battlefield commander looks like. Monty is what a posh little bitch looks like. Monty made all of the Brits look bad. Of course, the Brits make themselves look bad by still insisting that Monty was some sort of a great fucking general. No, he wasn't. Tell you what, if you're a kindergarten class and another kid's kindergarten class go to war on the playground, who's going to win? You got equal numbers, right? Close enough. Some of the kids in your class are going to be big, some are going to be little. Same with your opponent. All things considered, it ought to be a pretty even match. Now, when you go to Chapel High School, or let's make it an even smaller high school, let's say Lodgepole High School, it was still open. You're talking about less than 30 kids in every graduating class. Less than 30 kids in the graduating class. Right? And then you're also talking about a high school like Lincoln High School in Tacoma, Washington. We're talking about, well, around 800 students. Now, when you've got a class of 800 students versus a class of under 30 students, who's going to win logistically? By the numbers. Except somehow Monty found a way to lose at almost such overwhelming odds. When the Germans have 47 tanks, and you go in on the first day and you lose 120 tanks, and then you go in again and you lose over 100 again, and then you come at them with 500 tanks. What are you going to do if you're Monty? You're going to be a fucking idiot and full frontal assault with 500 tanks across a goddamn clearly marked minefield. That's right. The Germans marked out the minefield so it could be read from all sides. And still, 1/3 of the tank losses to mines were tank commanders backing up over their own mines. Smart. Although that was technically a victory for Monty, it wasn't. If it hadn't been for one of his real battlefield strategists, they never would have won. Now, Monty wasn't just known for being a complete and total fuck up in North Africa. That's not the only place where he fought. Well, he didn't fight, did he? Did he ever fight? No, he didn't. He wasn't a battlefield commander. He was a paper pusher. He knew how to fire a goddamn pencil, and he knew how to run his mouth. As far as firing a gun or running an army, this guy was an idiot. Was, and of course, as history has shown, will always be remembered that way to everyone except for the British. I know, we all got to have our heroes, right? Well, the British decision to keep good old Monty resulted in several 100,000 lives that were useless. Hundreds of thousands of lives that could have been saved by sacking the son of a bitch. The other thing is, with Winston Churchill in command, there ain't much that between him and George S. Patton that they couldn't achieve. Erwin Rommel wrote a book about tank tactics. And it's funny because majority of that stuff in his book came from George S. Patton. Erwin Rommel had no idea what he was stepping into, what arena he was stepping into, who he was stepping up against. Because when the war started, America was not a part of it. And Germany was doing everything they could to keep America out of it. It's not like Franklin Roosevelt wasn't, well, you know he was spurned for a fight. He had American industry producing wartime materials before the British did. That's right. When did the British start production? When did they start actual serious wartime production? During the Battle of Britain. They got started. During the Battle of Britain, that's right. When they thought they were going to get invaded. That's when they finally stepped up. Now, as many of us know, the United States had already stepped up and ramped up its production starting in 1933 to 1936. By the time war broke out, one thing that y'all want to fail to realize when we talk about things like Bull Run, that shit all existed before America entered the war. Years before America entered the war. With most of this stuff, well, we started ramping up our production before there even was a war. The only people we needed to really worry about were the Japanese, and they'd been to war with China for quite a while. We say 1936, but they'd been at it since 1933. 1933. By the time America got involved in the fighting with Japan, the Japanese had a lot of experience fighting a war, and the Americans didn't. Same issue that we had when we had to get our asses whooped at Kasserine Pass. It happens. You don't become a prize boxer overnight. Anyway, Monty was well liked by his troops. That's why he was kept. The British felt that if they sacked Monty, they would have a lot of attrition issues. I disagree. I think most of those guys, if they'd have had an actual battlefield commander instead of a rear echelon motherfucker like Monty, the kind of guy who will get into a tank for a photo op. Did he actually fight from inside of that tank? No, he didn't. He gave orders from the back of the bus. Monty is one of the most shameful things for the British to continue throwing at us. Monty didn't save Great Britain, the United States did. Monty didn't win World War II. The British, the Americans, the French, the Russians, the Polish, the Danish took a lot of people to stop the Germans. And Monty wasn't one of them. The very, very few Russian generals with worse reputations than Monty didn't survive long enough to try to make things right. Monty has the worst numbers across the board, even worse than the Russians. Sure, for one or two battles, maybe the Russians had it worse off. But like any intelligent leader, Stalin got rid of the losers. And no, Stalin wasn't a good leader. Why didn't the United States can Dwight David Eisenhower when he fucked it up? Oh yeah, because he didn't. Why didn't the United States can George S. Patton when he lost a battle? Because he didn't. Patton never lost a battle. Monty killed more of his own people than the Germans did. Sure, he didn't pull out his pistol and shoot them all in the head himself. No, what he did is throw them senselessly, uselessly, and stupidly headlong into the enemy. Exactly the same tactic that won us World War II against the Japanese. Sure, you claim it's the bomb, but in reality, Okinawa could have held out for a lot longer if they hadn't had so many bayonet charges. Japanese pride got in the way of logistical supremacy. When 450 Marines can take out 2,500 Japanese soldiers on an entrenched island, it makes you wonder what the fuck the Japanese were thinking. Unlike Monty, the Japanese knew that failure would result in their deaths. Unlike Monty, the Russian generals knew that failure would lead to their death. Unlike Monty, even the German commanders knew that it would lead to their death. But you also get to see how, at the siege of Stalingrad, even a German general decided rather than putting a gun in his face and pulling the trigger, he'd rather become a POW. The British are far more kind to their generals than anyone else in the world. They allow their generals a lot more leeway. Now here we are many, many, many years since World War II ended. The British haven't changed. The same air of superiority. The same belief that if they don't acknowledge that they needed help, got help, that it means that they didn't need it. If they pretend that Monty was this perfect battlefield commander, then it makes the fact that they got their asses whooped not so bad, because their pride of the stiff upper lip, right? Fucking dumb. Although I'm an American, we ain't got much room to speak, do we? Oh, in World War II, we certainly do. Monty, after the United States entered the war, made it his personal goal to prevent America from making any headway. And even with Monty throwing a gear in the works over and over and over again, the American rookies still mopped the floor with the German asses, now didn't they? Then we want to talk about Operation Market Garden. Hell, they made a movie about that one, didn't they? Of course they did. What's Market Garden? Well, that's Monty's greatest achievement, apparently. Do we talk about any actual achievements? Are there any actual achievements to speak of when it comes to Monty? No. No, there ain't. If you give Monty a 10-to-1 ratio of tanks, what's he gonna do? He's gonna send them in a headlong bonsai charge like a fucking moron. Oh yeah, and then he's gonna put a minefield right behind his fucking tank so they can't back out. Oh, that's fucking smart. What happens if you throw a 5-year-old in a ring with a professional boxer? All right, now let's throw 10 5-year-olds in with a professional boxer. Who's gonna win? Do you really think those 5-year-olds stand a chance in hell? They don't have the strength, they don't have the experience. They don't have the reach. Do you really think that by putting a bunch of mines around the boxing ring that it's going to make your 5-year-olds any tougher? No, you're just going to end up blowing up your 5-year-olds. How about don't waste the 5-year-olds? How about let them mature a little bit? Monty wasn't any good at that. He wasn't any good at training. He wasn't any good at logistics. He wasn't any good at paying attention to what his troops were or were not capable of. He figured they were there, they were going to do as they were told, whether they were trained to do so or not. What kind of a fucking idiot puts landmines behind his own fucking tanks. Monty. Who else? Just Monty. No other general in World War II is that fucking stupid. Believe me, I looked it up. I've been trying to find just one other general who would pull such a fucking stupid maneuver. Nobody did. The British are where we get our pride from, isn't it? What do we call it now? An aversion to authority? No. That's not it. An aversion to authority wouldn't be a stiff upper lip. That's not the right kind of pride, is it? No. Oh, that's a nice bike. Oh. The British pride, the idea that if you don't admit that you screwed up, then it means you didn't screw up. If you try selling that lie long enough, eventually people will believe it. Well, guess what? 80 years on, nobody believes Monty. Nobody except the British. Nobody believes that Monty was a great battlefield general because he wasn't. But the British believe if they pretend hard enough, it'll make it true. Monty was a fuck up. And if you have any opinion other than that, you're a fuck up too. Now, of course, these are opinions and they're speculative, ain't they? So take it with a grain of salt. If you like Monty, I think you're an idiot. But you may think that he was the greatest general who ever lived. It's all speculative, isn't it? Well, let's take a look at the numbers. The numbers show that Monty consistently got his ass whooped. Consistently. Over and over again. No general in World War II got their asses kicked more than Monty because nobody canned Monty. Although he should have been. He cost a lot of American lives. He cost a lot of British lives. And that's what happens when you have somebody who's a general based on popularity instead of logistics. You don't put a pencil pusher in charge of troops. And you should expect that a pencil pusher should know his logistics. They'd be better off in World War II if they'd handed all that over to a fucking supply clerk. No joke. Monty, on more than one occasion, was going to throw headlong attacks at the Germans, fortified positions, and the only thing that helped him in those situations was the fact that supply clerks were able to get him the supplies that he wanted, and including stealing it from other units, by the way. Monty was a cold man. He hated everybody, thought his ideas were better than everybody else's, and anybody that didn't listen to him, he was horrible to. And he wasn't above having a tank commander shoot his own crew. Bernard Montgomery is probably the worst piece of British trash I'd have to say ever. Even in World War I, In World War One, it's understandable about the numbers losses. It's understandable about the stagnation of the warfare. See, that's what the Germans did in World War II, is try to make sure it didn't get stagnant. Make sure that the enemy didn't have time to establish those open trenches, and make sure they go around and do some sort of flanking maneuver. See, that's the difference, at least a little bit, between the Germans and the Japanese. The Japanese, it was pretty much always a frontal fucking stupid bonsai charge. With the Germans, yeah, they were going to counterattack. But they were going to counterattack from two different directions if they could, until the Battle of the Bulge, where they could only attack from one. The Battle of the Bulge was based on a wing and a prayer. When we talk about Operation Market Garden, you take a look at the movie, you realize that they blame the British tank units for not doing their jobs. That's right. What was Monty's favorite tactic? To blame his own men. It's his men's fault, not his. His men should have fought harder. His men should have used imaginary bullets, apparently, when they were out. Monty has the United States of America, the United States of Sherman tanks, and two of his own staff that he had canned to thank for his victories. As far as his own tactics, no, the guy was an idiot. When he won, it was through sheer force of numbers and nothing else. Oh, no. We can't say nothing else, can we? The only two victories that Monty was able to achieve in North Africa, both happened only because his own men ignored his orders.